Now, obviously, we did the story about the Salon captain. He was found guilty for gross negligence manslaughter, which is the same. Actually, it's the same thing that the captain of Bayesian has been investigated for in Italy. It doesn't mean in Italy it's a bit different. You can be investigated for something, but you're not charged with it. And he's under investigation for that same thing. But anyway, this chap got found guilty, and one of the things that the police said is that when he first came ashore, the story, they said it was very vague, the story that he gave, and they said it changed over time, right? And but one of the first officer who worked on the Salon, he said that when they were in the lifeboat, the captain was silent. He said he did not explain what had happened. I cannot understand why the collision happened, and I'm not aware of any faults or deficiencies in the ship. All the equipment was in good working order. That's the second, was it the first officer or second officer on board the Salon? It might have been the first officer. And I think it's quite clear. I mean, I played that footage of the time it took for him to make a radio call from the incident. So I played it in the video. I can play it again. You see you hear the crash, and then it's the audio from the VDR on the Salon is playing, and you've got camera footage from one of them is from the bridge on the Stena Immaculate, and the other one is from the bridge of another vessel which was nearby, which was pointing directly at the Stena Immaculate. But the audio is from the VDR of the Salon, and you can hear this long silence of, I think they said it's 63 seconds, so it was over a minute of no noise at all, and it's quite clear from that video that he's not on the bridge. Nobody's on the bridge when that collision happened. And then after 63 seconds, you hear static from a radio, and I said that it sounds like, even at that point, it sounds like he's not on the bridge. And the reason why I said that is because you hear this static noise before he starts speaking on the radio, and that's generally a noise that you only hear when you're receiving a message. You don't, when you transmit on a VHF radio, you don't hear anything until you take your finger off the button. And you hear this, and then you hear him talk, and then you hear static again at the end. Now, what I was thinking after I posted and said it sounds like he's still not on the bridge, I'm not 100% sure he is on the bridge. I guess the investigators think he is. It's quite possible that they have two VHF radios, because that's normally the case. You have two VHF radios on the bridge. For redundancy, you have one actually on the conning station, maybe even two on the conning station, and normally you'll have a second one or a third one by the radio station, which is usually behind where you have your MFHF and your Inmarsat C and stuff. And the VDR speaker could have been near to another VHF unit. So when the captain finally got to the bridge and he started to transmit, you're hearing it on the other radio. So that's quite possible. But to me, it still sounds like his voice still sounds like it's coming through a speaker on the radio. But again, that could be because he's not only is it picking up his voice on the bridge, it's also picking up his voice on the radio. So that's a possibility, I guess. But that whole case is a complete mess, isn't it? Really, I don't think we'll ever get the truth from that captain. Because obviously now he's been found guilty of gross negligent manslaughter, and he's been given 6 years in prison, which I don't think that it sounds a lot to him. It doesn't sound a lot to us, right? Considering that somebody lost their life because he decided to, most likely, my speculation, that he left the bridge. I think it's quite clear from that video or from that audio footage that he wasn't on the bridge when that ship crashed. He's trying to say that he was trying to do all this stuff, and he didn't want to do a crash stop because he felt like the ship would turn and hit the accommodation area of the Stena Immaculate. I think that's all nonsense, because why is there no audio at all of him? You can't hear any movement other than after the crash. It's just complete silence on the bridge. So he clearly wasn't on the bridge at the time of that impact. So he's never going to admit that. He's gone through an entire court case not admitting it. He didn't speak to any of the crew in the lifeboat. He remained silent because he knew what he'd done, right? He knew he was sitting there thinking, I'm going to prison because I've cocked up, I've left the bridge unattended, and we've had this accident. A few of the comments, there was a few comments saying that there should always be 2 people on the bridge at night. This happened at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it wasn't at night. In actual fact, I think I might have told this story before. I've certainly told the patrons. I was on a yacht, and we were at sea. We were in the Mediterranean, and I got called, and I was told, go to the owner's suite. The owner wasn't on board. We were transiting. Go to the owner's suite. There's a problem with one of the doors, and the owner's suite was at the front of the ship, facing the front, facing the bow of the ship, and it had 2 doors that opened like sliding doors that were motored sliding doors, and usually they're secured when you're at sea, and you have buttons that you press buttons, and you can lock it in position, and you have these inflatable things that go around the edge of the door so no water will come through. For some reason, this door had opened while we were underway, and I got told to go up there immediately and get the door fixed. So it's about 8 o'clock at night. I went up there. I go into the cabin, and the captain's there. And the captain was very handy. He knew the yacht very well, but he was there anyway. And I was surprised to see him. So anyway, we worked on this door, and there was a problem with the door. It wasn't responding to the controls. I don't remember exactly what happened now. But then we were there for about 10 minutes, and we managed to get this door closed. And then he said, I have to go. I'm on watch on the bridge, and I've left the bridge unattended. And he was a bit of a joker, the captain, and then he ran off, right? And he went up to the bridge. Now, I never followed him, so I don't know if that's true. And initially, I thought he had to be joking, but I was stuck in my mind. And then for a longest time, I believed that that's what had happened, that he'd left the bridge unattended. And then I thought, well, usually there's 2 people on watch at night. Maybe he left the bridge with the other watchkeeper, the watchstander, which would be a deckhand who's not qualified to be on the bridge on his own. But at least there's somebody there, right? To, at the very least, call on the radio if some incident happens. But I don't know. I mean, the proper procedure there, if he has to leave the bridge, he would have to call one of the other officers of the watch who's off, and ask them to come up to the bridge, and then he would hand over to them temporarily and then leave the bridge. And then the bridge is properly manned, right? That's the way it works when you do it properly. And for the longest time, I believed that he'd left the bridge unattended, but then afterwards I was thinking, he was a bit of a joker, and I'm sure it was a joke, and he didn't really do that, but you never know. Now, going back to actually another incident where there was a collision at sea, was in the Caribbean, Bahamas, sorry, not the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, and this yacht, Utopia 4, crashed into the stern of an oil tanker, a small oil tanker that was delivering oil to the local islands, and the oil tanker sank as a result. And it turns out that the captain had left the bridge at night, and he'd left a watchstander on the bridge, a deckhand who was assisting on the bridge, right? He'd left him on the bridge on his own. And apparently, according to some of the crew who we spoke to, he'd been drinking, this captain, and he went off and he was doing things he shouldn't have been doing. I don't know what they were, but he wasn't on the bridge. He didn't leave the bridge for a good reason. He left the bridge unattended, effectively, because there was no qualified officer of the watch on the bridge. And then as a result, even though there was another person on the bridge, they still collided. The vessel was doing 19 knots at the time of the collision, and the vessel collided. And there was still somebody on the bridge, a watchstander. For whatever reason, that watchstander didn't see that other vessel. Now, the other vessel's AIS was not functioning at the time. And this is why I say why it's so dangerous for people to be switching off their AIS. I say it a lot on the channel, and people kind of think, oh, well, it doesn't matter, It doesn't really matter in the scheme of things, but this collision could have been avoided because that deckhand who was on the bridge, he probably doesn't know how to read the radar signal of another vessel at night. He can't see the vessel out the window. He's looking at the radar. He doesn't know how to determine if that's another vessel or if it's something else on the radar signal, right? And normally when you have on an ARPA system or on an integrated system, you have the AIS is overlaid onto the radar, so you would have a triangle on the thing. So even if you don't know how to tell the difference between a vessel and a cloud or something in the water, you will see the triangle and the name of the vessel, and you'll know there's another vessel there. But if your AIS isn't working, then that's not showing on screen, right? That's why I always go on about AIS on vessels and these yachts that just switch it off because it suits them to switch it off whenever they feel like it, like Nord as a good example, and Amadea has been doing it lately, and Samsara possibly doing it. A J.K. Rowling's yacht covering up the name on the stern, potentially switching off AIS. I don't know whether they are. They might be just blocking it from marine traffic. But there's a Symphony is another one that does that, but it's legally doing it. It's blocking marine traffic. But there's a lot. I mean, that's fair enough. If they've managed to convince marine traffic to switch off, to not allow that data to go out onto the internet, then that's at least the yacht is still not. It's not breaking the rules, right? But yachts like Nord, they're just switching it off because they want to hide. So that's why I always bring it up. I know I'm kind of repetitive with it, but these are examples here where there could have been the difference between those yachts colliding or not. You've been watching a clip from our new Yacht Report podcast. Catch the full episode by clicking here. You can find a link to the new YouTube channel Yacht Report podcast down here. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.